So I get a call from a friend who asked me to write down a couple of my funny or interesting workshop stories. He's asking a bunch of luthiers, and he's putting together a book of these stories. So I told Jeannie about it, and she said, "Well, you need to tell the fuck you story." And I thought, "Oh yeah, I never thought that was a very funny story." But then I remembered in late 1990, I was giving a talk at the Hillsborough Guitar Show with Jim Olson and John Grevin on small shop production. And that evening, we were at a party at Rabicki's place, and I told Jim this story. And Jim doubled over laughing. I mean, clearly he could relate to it. And the rest of the show, he kept bringing people to me saying, "Tell the story, tell the story." So maybe it's funnier than I realize. But here you go. A little background. In the 1980s, I primarily was doing repair work, and there was no acoustic guitar market for pretty much anybody at that time. And I was grateful to have the repair work, met a lot of interesting people, worked on a lot of fantastic guitars, and learned a lot, and made lifelong connections, really. And during that time, I was still building some guitars as time permitted. I could put out 4 or 5 guitars a year, and they were all different one-off things. But I did have my first foray into small shop production. One of my electric guitar designs became quite popular, and I built about 30 of them, and they sold as fast as I could put them together, to the point that I went and got a U.S. design patent on the body because I thought a bigger company might be interested in producing these things. Well, that didn't happen. And around 1990, the acoustic guitar market started kicking back in gear. And gradually, all that time I was putting in doing repair and restoration work and the time I was putting in guitar building, I was able to flip it. And it allowed me to start building full time. In a couple of years, after over 10 years of working, the 6-day week, I was finally able to do what I set out to do, which is build my own instruments full time. So in the early 1990s, I had reached the point where, with great effort, I got to say, I got stores taking my guitars, and I was supplying these stores. I had a Japanese distributor and a German distributor. Remember, this is the very early days of handmade guitars, so it's quite unique that I was able to do this. I fitted in a little niche in the market. And I was working my ass off happily. I was going 6.5 days a week, 100 miles an hour, giving it all I had. The horse was out of the barn. I finally got to do what I wanted to do. And I was putting out initially 40 guitars a year, and that grew to 50 guitars a year. And I sustained that for almost through the whole rest of that decade. So anyway, youthful exuberance. that's all that was. That and strong desire and happiness. I was just enjoyed doing everything. Finish work, inlay work, marketing, the whole thing. So I was busy is the point. And I get a phone call. And the phone call was from a young man who is interested in buying one of my Everett electrics, one of the 30. It was at a music store nearby. And I knew the guitar, and I knew the store, and I knew the store had a problem with a flood damage. A fire extinguisher had gone off, and I think the guitar was saved from that. But this guitar had changed hands several times, and they were selling it cheap, to the point this high school kid could buy the guitar. So he was thrilled to be able to get it, and I knew what he was paying for it, so he was getting a deal. And he contacts me and says, "Oh, I'm so excited! I'm going to get one of your guitars. I want you to paint it white for me." And I said, "No, there's no way I'm going to do that." In my mind, I'm thinking, gee, the last thing I want to do is take on a finished job. I mean, I can hardly keep up with this roller coaster that I've created for myself as it is, and taking on this side project for a third-hand guitar. I'm just not going to do it. The other thing, as a finisher, you would know that if you spray something white, 4 or 5 batches later, one little speck of white paint stuck somewhere in the booth is going to go bang right on the top of a sunburst that you're doing or whatever. So the last thing I want to do is do this. But also, and primarily, it was a beautiful guitar. It had a walnut burl top on it with a dark burgundy back and sides and a black line between the two, cream pickups, gold hardware, and that's how I designed it. And I was proud of it, and I didn't want to ruin it. It's like taking a beautiful hardwood floor and putting wall-to-wall shag carpet on it. I'm not the guy to do that, right? So I hope you enjoy it. Bye. No, he calls back and then he calls back. About the third time, which is 2 times too many that he calls, I'm getting the idea. In fact, he told me he was going to go get a rattle can of white paint and paint it. I said, well, hold on, don't ruin the guitar. Let me see if I can find somebody to help you with that. So I call a friend of mine in North Georgia, Greg Kerbo, who became quite well known for building these beautiful little basses, electric basses. And I had known Greg for years. We were both characters in the music scene in Atlanta for a long time. We even played in a band together a long time ago. And we were friends. I liked Greg, and we got along well. He's a good guy. And because of that, he was willing to do this for me. And I said, I'll hand you this guitar, no hardware on it. I'll take it all apart. How much would you charge me to spray it white, and how long will it take? He says, I think he said $250, something like that. Remember, this is 1992, $93. So, and 2 months. So I said, great. So I call the kid and say, 3 months, $300, because I know how it's going to go, right? So that's just it. So the kid is thrilled. In the end, he's going to get a white guitar like he wants, and he's still got a fantastic deal on it. So he's a happy guy. Well, as we get closer to the 2-month mark, remember I told him 3 months, he's starting to call every week. And remember, every time he calls me, he interrupts me from what I'm doing. I had to stop what I'm doing and go tell him again the same thing. It's not time yet. Let's give Greg the opportunity to do, the time to do what he needs to do the job that you want. The deal was 3 months. Okay. 5-6 weeks, the guy's calling like twice a week. And at this point, I call Greg and say, you had told me 2 months, and this guy's calling me all the time. It's becoming a problem rapidly. And so every 3 times he calls me and interrupts me, I'm going to call you once. And just keep in mind that this guy is becoming a problem. So let's get this done. Yeah, man, I'll have it for you Saturday. Well, Saturday comes and goes, and no Greg. Next Saturday comes and goes, no Greg. Next Saturday, And now the kid, by this time, the kid is really having a hissy fit. He hadn't matured yet. He hadn't developed the tools for dealing with this kind of thing yet. He's still a kid. And maybe this is the first time something hadn't gone the way he wanted it to go in his life, because he's inappropriate. He's way over the top responding to this. And I'm thinking, from my side, well, man, I'm doing you a favor here. I don't even want to do this or have anything to do with this. This is a third-hand guitar that got sold cheap at like a fire sale at a music store, and you're asking me to do something I don't want to do, paint it white. But I'm stepping up to the plate anyway, because I didn't want you to ruin the guitar. And this is what I'm thinking to myself. I'm thinking, well, and to him, this is a lot of money, and it is my guitar, so I do want it to be right. So anyway, I'm going through a lot of grief. I'm eating a lot of grief from this guy, and not making any money on it. And I'm feeling put upon, right? So I call Greg and say, blah, blah, blah. He goes, sure, man, I'll have it for you Saturday. I said, well, hang on. And this is the first part of the week. I say, if you actually get it to me Saturday, I'll throw an extra $100 on this to make this problem go away. Because this is a real problem. I'm getting real sick of it. So I need to get it out of my life so I can get back to doing, what I want to be doing, without being interrupted by this kid all the time. Okay, yeah, man. So he hangs up. So I made it clear that this Saturday extra $100 doesn't arrive Saturday, no extra $100, right? So Saturday comes, and the kid has been calling me. I didn't say anything to the kid about this because it may not happen. So Saturday comes, no Greg, and I'm cleaning the shop up every week. At the end of the week, clean it all up, put all the tools back, just so I can get started at ground zero again, or at square one again on Monday morning. And often Sunday I'd be in there working a little bit anyway. But anyway, one of my rules was every Saturday night, clean it up. So I'm cleaning the shop up, and the phone rings at 7 o'clock, and it's Greg. He goes, man, I'm on my way. And then he hangs up, and I'm thinking, great, but what does that mean? He's driving from North Georgia. Is he already in Atlanta? Oh, what's going on? So I kind of pussyfoot around for a while, and he doesn't show up. And I think, well, at this time, my shop and home were right next to each other. So I walked over to the home side and took a shower and put some clean clothes. I was supposed to go out with some friends that night. So 8 o'clock, no Greg. 9 o'clock, no Greg. So I called my friends and say, look, I'm stuck waiting for this guy. I'm not going to make it. Go on. And about 9:30, I hear it coming. Here's this radio car with holes in the muffler. Comes flying in my driveway. He hits the gravel parking area sideways, and gravel is flying. And it's a rusty old Cadillac from the 1950s. And he had a yard full of these things. He loved them for some reason. And the man has arrived. So he walks in with a guitar, and we open the case, and I look at it, and it's great. And I'm thinking, maybe I was wrong. it looks great white. I mean, it's certainly got a new lease on life, and it's beautiful. So we hang out for a little bit, and he pay him the extra $100 in the money, and he's gone. And so now it's about 10 o'clock, and I'm thinking, well, tonight's ruined. I might as well go ahead and try to get this thing together to get it done ASAP, so I can get this over with. So I'm putting it back together, putting the tuners on it and the bridge on it, and putting in the electronics and all this. And the pickups wouldn't fit in the pickup holes. It was a catalyzed finish, and Greg had flooded the pickup cavity. So the single coils would fit tightly, but they fit. So I had to do a little filing to get them so they would slide. But the humbucker wouldn't fit. So I thought, well, the humbucker has a ring on it. The other ones were cut in the body, so I couldn't really mess with that very much. But the humbucker had a ring, so I thought, what I'll do is I'll take it over to my overarm router and just trim the edge of the that thick finish off, and the ring, if it gets chewed a little bit, the pickup ring will hide it. And so I thought, well, I'm used to this thing. I've used it for years. Mine was first, let me tell you what an overarm router is. It's a big router head with a bit pointing down onto a cast iron table, and you raise and lower that router bit into whatever you're working on with the foot pedal. And the foot pedal locks to hold it down, and then when you're done, you raise it back up. And mine was a big cast iron Delta industrial one. And like I say, I'd used it forever. And I made all these guitars, all the electric guitars were made on it. So I was pretty comfortable with it. Usually you have a template on the bottom of the piece of the wood riding a pin to cut the shape from the top. So it's a trick that's been used for, 100 years, But this is finished, so I couldn't put the template on the back. So I'm thinking, well, I'm pretty good with my hands. I'm pretty used to this machine, so I'll go for it, by hand. So I'm not too worried about it. So I take a towel, make sure get a clean towel, no little lumps or any crud in it to scratch that finish. One layer, not 2 layers, 3 layers, one layer of towel so it doesn't bunch up, so the body slides easily on it. So I put it on there. I cut the thing on, wah, which is what it always did. It was loud, wah, and that bit is going whatever 1,000, RP, 60,000 RPM, whatever it is. I don't remember. It was, and I dropped that thing down in the pickup cavity. And as soon as that bit touches the pickup, the overarm router goes, fuck you, grabs the guitar, slams it up into the head, and slams around, blah, 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 blah. And then it proceeded to make the guitar its bitch. Throwing the body back and forth, and the neck is going back and forth like this with all that noise and paint chips flying, and I smell the burn of maple. So, and I can't get to the off button because it's under the table where that neck is going back and forth. So I'm looking around for a broom handle, and I find a broom handle, and I get under it, and I click it off, and the whole thing just kind of calms down and settles down. And at that point, I got this anger that started on the tip of my toes and ran up to the top of my head. And I was just anger incarnate. And at this moment, I came up with a phrase that I've used ever since. And I've taught all my students this, and I've employed it many times since. And that is, the sharpest tool in your shop can sometimes be a walk around the block. And that's what I did. I cut everything off. I walk out the door. It's 11 o'clock now. And I'm in a sort of a dicey area, transitional neighborhood. And no one's going to fuck with me because I'm mad. And I'm stomping around the neighborhood, and I come back, and I go home, and I've calmed down some, and take a shower and get all ready for bed. And I had a bad night, and the next day I get up and have breakfast and coffee. I'm putting off going back in the shop, but the time has come, so I have to go back in the shop. So I walk in the door, and there it is, ground zero, where the bit hit that pickup cavity. And in a 3-foot radius, there's white dust. It looked like snow from the white, beautiful white finish. And the guitar was at a kilter on the table with the bit burrowed down into it, holding it in place. And that clean little towel I had, it was sitting on top of that. And so I go over and I release the bit and raise it out. And I'm looking at it. To my amazement, it wasn't too bad. So I'm picking it up and looking at it and looking on the back and all. And there are a few big dings, but they were soft dings in the back, like a bowling ball had hit it, And later I was able to flip it over, of course, and go at it with some steam and water and get the divots to pucker back out, re-wet sand the back, rebuff the back. And it looked like nothing had happened. Of course, a lot of time, a lot of effort, but I was able to save it. The top, it was being thrown around and being held in place because the bit was holding it in place down in the. So the only thing that got chewed up is what I'm getting around to. Neck survived, fingerboard survived, side survived, top survived, everything looked good except for that humbucker pickup cavity. And what had happened was the bit had grabbed that humbucker pickup cavity and yanked it up and routed an additional 3/16 of an inch out of the bottom of that cavity. And by some merciful stroke of good luck, the edges of the pickup cavity held that bit in place. It was a straight bit, and I imagine it was riding on this on the smooth part of the bit and not on the cutting bit, because it just went around and around and around and routed it. By the time I was able to cut it off, it took off an extra 3/16 of an inch, nice and smooth. And the edge of the pickup cavity itself, it still looked like a humbucker shape, but it was chewed up. So when I cleaned it all up with a file, and it looked pretty good, you know. So when I put the ring back on, of course, it was poking out from the edges of the pickup ring, so I had to make another pickup ring for it. And luckily, I had a stash of plexiglass that you can, by the way, you can get in the dumpster of any sign making company. So I kept a stash of these plexiglass. I had some gloss white plexiglass that I made a ring out of, and beveled the edge and buffed it, the edge, and also it looked great. By the way, it's a huge pain in the ass, but I did. So I got it all back together. It's looking good. Hooray! You know, I mean, really hooray. So Monday comes and I call the kid and say, it's done. You know, he goes, wahoo! And he comes over. I mean, it seemed like it was within 10, 15 minutes he was there. So here it is, the big moment, right? So I open the case up, and there's this beautiful white guitar. He looks at it, and his mouth falls open. He goes, in like a split second, he goes, and looks right at the pickup ring, and he's pointing at the one that I had made. He starts to say something. I go, stop. I said, don't say anything. Take it and be happy. And he stops. He took it, and he was happy. I never heard from him again. And I honestly don't think about this story much because it's not a pleasant story. It was quite dangerous, and I got lucky that it could have been very bad. But it wasn't, and it worked out okay. Well, 30, 35 years go by. I haven't heard from this guy. He's grown up now. You know, he's a man. And he sent me a message via Messenger and explained to me who he was. I'm like, oh, yeah. And he goes, I still have it. I play the white guitar almost every day, and I'm still happy. So it's a good story.